You look at your phone. There's a group chat you've been part of for years. You drop a message, maybe a funny observation, or a question about weekend plans. Hours pass. Nothing. No reactions. No replies. The chat just sits there, completely still. But a few hours later, someone else sends a random meme to that exact same chat, and within seconds, there are 5 laughing emojis, and a whole conversation breaks out. You didn't get bullied. Nobody yelled at you. Nobody kicked you out. But in that tiny, quiet moment, your brain registers a truth you've known for a very long time. You are there, but you are not essential. You are the filler episode of someone else's favorite show. You are the backup friend. This isn't about being actively disliked. That would actually be easier to process because at least hatred is an active emotion. This is about existing in the gray area of relationships. The people who are invited to the big party, but never for the quiet coffee on a Tuesday morning. The ones whose absence is noticed, but never truly felt. If you know exactly what I'm talking about, you've probably spent a lot of time wondering what is fundamentally wrong with your personality. But psychologists who study social dynamics have found something entirely different. There is nothing wrong with you. But living in the background of other people's lives for years has fundamentally rewired your nervous system. You don't just have a different personality, you possess an entirely different set of survival skills. Let's start with something that probably annoys everyone around you, but you literally cannot turn it off. Your hyper-awareness. You know that moment when you're talking to a friend, and mid-sentence, you suddenly realize they've checked out. Their tone shifts just a fraction of a decibel. Their eye contact breaks for a microsecond too long. They haven't said they want to leave, but your brain has already packed your bags. Psychologists call this rejection sensitivity, but a better term for it is high-speed pattern recognition. When you spend your life as the second choice, your brain learns to predict the pulling away phase seconds before it actually happens. You can sense the distance before the other person even admits to themselves that they are distancing. It's not paranoia, it's an evolutionary adaptation. Your nervous system is collecting data to protect you from the shock of being dropped. You don't get blindsided by abandonment anymore, because you're already waiting by the exit. This brings us to a phenomenon that confuses almost everyone who doesn't experience it, the birthday paradox. While most people love the attention, the cake, the messages flooding their timeline, people who are used to being the backup option often deeply despise their own birthdays. If this is you, you probably try to go to work like it's a normal Tuesday. You might even hide your birth date on social media. Why? Because when you've spent your life feeling like an option, forced attention feels like a lie. When the spotlight is finally on you for one specific calendar day, it doesn't feel like genuine love. It feels like societal obligation. You sit there, looking at the cake, listening to people sing, and your brain whispers, they are only doing this because they have to, so they can feel like good people. You don't hate being loved. You hate feeling like a charity project. You would trade a massive, forced surprise party for one random Tuesday where someone reaches out just because they genuinely miss your presence. And because you crave that genuine connection so deeply, you easily fall into what relationship experts call the overgiver dynamic. You become the therapist friend, the crisis manager, the one who is suddenly a top priority, but only when someone's life is falling apart. You listen to their breakups, you help them move apartments, you answer the phone at 2 a.m. You give them 200% of your energy because somewhere deep inside, your subconscious believes that if you just become useful enough, you will finally become irreplaceable. You make yourself the ultimate emotional safety net. But here is the heartbreaking reality you eventually discover. When their storm passes, when they are healed and happy and ready to celebrate life again, they don't take you to the party, they go find the fun friends. You are the hospital they visit when they are sick, not the home they live in when they are well. This constant imbalance leads to one of the most dangerous psychological traps you can fall into. Let's call it the loyalty trap. There's a psychological concept rooted in scarcity mindset. When you deprive a human being of a basic need, like food, their brain becomes obsessed with it. And when a starving person finally finds something to eat, they don't check if the food is healthy. They don't care if it's expired, they just consume it. Emotional starvation works exactly the same way. When you have never been anyone's first choice, and suddenly, someone walks into your life and puts you at the top of their list, your gratitude is overwhelming. It is so deep, so blinding, that it becomes dangerous. You become fiercely, undeniably loyal. You will walk through fire for them, but in doing so, you will overlook 1,000 red flags. You will excuse abusive behavior. You will accept breadcrumbs disguised as a feast. You tolerate being treated like absolute dirt simply because they chose you. You don't fear the mistreatment. You fear going back to the invisible background. It's not just a feeling, it is actual neuroscience. Back in 2003, researchers at UCLA conducted a groundbreaking study on social exclusion using functional MRI scanners. They wanted to see what happens in the brain when someone is left out of a simple game. What they found changed psychology forever. When you are ignored, isolated, or treated as a backup, the anterior cingulate cortex lights up. That is the exact same region of the brain that processes physical pain. Your brain literally cannot tell the difference between a broken arm and a broken connection. Being the second choice isn't just an emotional bummer. To your nervous system, it is a physical injury. So when people tell you to just get over it or stop being so sensitive, they are fundamentally misunderstanding human biology. Your brain is reacting to chronic injury. And like any chronic injury, you eventually learn to stop putting weight on it. That is when the great withdrawal happens. You don't make a big dramatic announcement. You don't send angry paragraphs. You just quietly run an experiment. You stop reaching out first. You stop initiating the plans. You stop doing all the heavy lifting in the relationship. You take your hands off the wheel just to see if anyone else will steer. And then the silence sets in. Weeks go by, maybe months. The people you thought were your closest friends simply fade away like ghosts. It hurts, yes, but it is also the most profound moment of clarity you will ever experience in your life. You realize you didn't actually have a huge friend group. You just had a lot of people you were willing to exhaust yourself for. You weren't maintaining relationships. You were holding a bridge together with your bare hands, and the moment you let go, it collapsed. This is the turning point. This is where the story shifts from a tragedy to a psychological awakening. For years, you thought being the backup friend meant you lacked value. But as you step back, you begin to see the hidden advantage of your isolation. You have developed what psychologists call defensive independence. But let's reframe that. You have developed emotional sovereignty. You know how to eat alone without looking at your phone to pretend you're busy. You know how to process a bad day without needing a committee to validate your feelings. You know how to survive the silence. You have built an internal fortress that most people who are constantly surrounded by others have never had to build. The people who are always chosen first often rely on external validation to simply exist. If everyone stops looking at them, they fall apart. But you already know how to operate in the dark. The truth is, not being chosen by the crowd was never a life sentence. It was a filter. It forced you to stop performing for people who were committed to misunderstanding you. The ultimate psychological upgrade happens when you stop viewing your independence as a symptom of rejection and start viewing it as a standard. You stop auditioning for a role in other people's lives. You transition from someone who waits to be the chosen to someone who finally becomes the chooser. You realize that your energy, your deep empathy, and your intense loyalty are incredibly rare currencies, and you stop spending them in shops that don't value your worth. You are not the backup friend. You are a highly selective individual who is currently taking applications for people who know how to match your effort. And until they show up, you are perfectly fine being your own absolute first choice.